Test, test, test. Hello, is there sound? Hello? I'm just waiting for a response before we continue. Hey, there we go. Okay. You should probably start from the top, Katya.
Sorry about that. You guys know with live streaming, there's always unpredictable things. So, okay, what I was saying is, I can't really speak to this from a place of experience, but thankfully I know someone pretty well who can, which is why my wife Kushka is here. Say hi, Kushka.
Hello.
So, today we're going to talk about the A spectrum, the A-Spec, or asexual and aromantic spectrum. Now, A-Spec or A-Spec or the A-spectrum is an umbrella term for all identities on the asexual spectrum and the aromantic spectrum. It can be used for anyone on the asexual spectrum or the aromantic spectrum or both, etc., and is sometimes used more broadly to include other identities that use the A prefix, like agender and aplatonic, and that's sometimes referred to as the triple A-Spec. Now, there's a controversy that aces and aros have sometimes been accused of appropriating the term A-Spec from the autistic community. Now, while everyone should support the autistic community, that's a given, this claim is actually impossible, as the term was created in 2015 specifically for aces and aros and has no prior usage at all before that point. And now there's another controversy within the ace and aro communities of the use of the term A-Spec, which has also been criticized for introducing confusion through frequent misuse, particularly regarding asexuals using A-Spec when only ace-spec people are relevant, or those saying A-Spec and arospec, implying that arospec is not inherently included under the A-Spec. Unfortunately for some people, A-Spec and ace-spec are phonetically sort of kind of like, you can't really tell the difference, you know? like when you say it fast, like A-Spec, A-Spec, I actually did enunciate there, we probably couldn't tell, when spoken aloud. Now, another thing to get into is there are people that are assholes called A-Spec exclusionists, which claim that ace and aros are not. Is my audio still good?
Yeah, you're just quiet.
Okay. How is that, everyone? Sorry about the technical difficulties today. Okay, so yeah, A-Spec exclusionists believe that ace people are not part of the GRSM community, which is that's ridiculous. Um, and oftentimes the ace exclusionists or A-Spec exclusionists will go so far as to say if you're not SGA, same gender attracted, which would mean, like M-Spec people are not included either, don't be an exclusionist. It's mega cringe, and you're a bad person if you are one, so don't be that. And ace people, aro people, you are part of the GRSM community, and anyone that says otherwise can fuck off.
Yep.
Yeah. So what's your opinion on exclusionists?
That they can do a thing in Minecraft.
Fair. Okay, so yes, A-Spec exclusionism is mega cringe. Don't do that. So let's go over the SAM. So I went over the split attraction model in my M-Spec video, but I think we should go over it again. So the split attraction model distinguishes romantic and sexual attraction. And like I talked about in my M-Spec video, like I'm demi-romantic despite being pansexual. And so it's something interesting that you can go with that. You can be various different types of um, identities and forms of attraction sexually that you might not feel romantically, or vice versa, because it's not one for one. There's different, like it's split, hence the term split. Does still bother me that that says bisexual rather than multisexual, but that's another thing. And all the Battle X buys just cringed. Hi, go away. Uh, so yeah, with that, let's go over. Is there anything else you want to say about the Sam, Kushka?
I mean, you went over it pretty thoroughly. I think it's really useful personally, and I am glad it exists because it really helps to explain, you know, the differences between like romantic and sexual attraction and how you can have someone that is like asexual but also lesbian, for example, like like homo romantic but asexual, and it makes sense. So, but yeah, you went over it well.
Awesome, thank you. Um, and let me know if you guys have any like questions or anything. I don't know if I'll be able to get to questions during the live chat, but like comments or anything. Um, so I do want to go over the different asexual labels that I know of. Now, there are probably more that I'm going to be able to get into, similar to what I said about the A-Spec thing, because it's almost like attraction is complicated. uh, but yeah, so we'll kind of go over this. So that kind of goes over what asexual and aromantic are. Little to no, little to no. It's a spectrum attraction, but in those regards. But yeah, gray sexual is a sexual spectrum on the asexual spectrum, referring to those who relate to asexuality, yet feel that there are parts of their experience that aren't fully described by the word asexual. And gray sexual can be used as a specific identity or even as an umbrella term for A-Spec, Ace-Spec, let me be clear there, identity that isn't purely asexual, including demisexual and others. Then there is mesisexual, and I might be pronouncing some of these wrong. If you feel like you want to correct me in the chat, if you know if I'm saying something wrong, I will not be offended if you tell me. Like I said, I'm not as familiar with this as I am A-Spec. But mesi-ace refers to someone who is on the asexual spectrum but is not completely strictly asexual. Also known as subtly asexual. Terms include gray asexuals, demisexuals, lithosexuals, and any other ace-spec people other than purely asexual. And then we've got demisexual, which is the asexual spectrum defined as someone who does not experience sexual attraction until they have formed a deep emotional connection with someone.
Hey, that's me. Hey, that's me.
Yeah, hi. The connection can be romantic, platonic, or some other form of connection. What counts as close connection can vary between demisexuals. For an emotional bond with someone does not mean that one is automatically attracted to said person, as it means there's now possibility for one to feel attraction. So that's the asexual, or the asexual, sort of like some of the terms. Now we're going to go into aromantic. And then I'm going to interrogate Kushka. So then we've got gray romantic, which is a romantic orientation on the aromantic spectrum, which describes those who relate with aromanticism, yet feel that there are parts of their experience that aren't fully described by the word aromantic. Gray romantic can be used as a specific identity or as an umbrella term for any arospec identity that isn't purely aromantic, including demi-romantic and others. Oh, hey, I'm demi-romantic. Okay, and then we've got mesi-aromantic, which refers to someone who is on the aromantic spectrum but is not completely strictly aromantic. The term includes gray romantics, demi-romantics, lithromantics, and any other arospec people other than pure aromantics. And then demi-romantic is a romantic orientation on the aromantic spectrum, defined as someone who does not experience romantic attraction until they have formed a deep emotional connection with someone. The connection can be sexual, platonic, or some other form of connection. Forming an emotional bond with someone does not mean, similar with demisexual, that one is automatically attracted to said person. It just means there's now the possibility. And then, of course, if someone describes themselves as purely asexual or purely aromantic, that would mean pretty much, I believe, none at all from what I'm able to tell. Again, bear with me, as this is a lot newer to me than A-Spec stuff. Kushka, are you ready to be interviewed thoroughly?
Sure. Go. Do it.
Okay. Okay, so where on the A-Spec, the total A-Spec, so Ace-Spec and Arospec, if you're comfortable sharing, are you?
Where am I on the
The A-Spec, so Ace-Spec and Arospec.
A-Spec and Arospec?
Mm-hmm.
Well, on the Ace-Spec, I am demisexual, so how I personally experience that, I don't really feel sexual attraction to anyone, really, except for this weird cat girl person that is in front of me. But yeah, it's basically before I met Katya, I just was not attracted to anyone, and I had no plans to be with anyone either, and it just wasn't something that I was interested in, cared about. Just wasn't my thing. On the Arrow spec, I actually don't know. That's actually something that I haven't fully figured out about myself on that side of things, but I do know that I am demisexual, so there's that.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you. Sorry for ruining that for you.
You're good.
Okay, so you kind of answered these already to a certain extent, but like how, if at all, do you experience attraction? Kind of already said, but
Yeah, I kind of answered a little bit already, but basically it's hard to explain because you're the only person I've been attracted to. Don't cry. You're the only person I've been attracted to that way. So it's kind of like I can appreciate when someone is like attractive looking, but it's not like in a, oh, that person's hot. It's like when you see like a nice painting and you're like, oh, that's a nice picture, but it's not sexual. It's just like they're pleasant. But you're the first person, because of how close we had become, that it was the first time that I ever actually felt any type of attraction that way, which was very new and weird for me. But I'm bad at explaining that, but I hope that makes sense. If what I said makes sense.
it does to me. But I'm attached to the situation, so in a good way, and I am very grateful to have you. Um, but yeah, I was gonna ask you, is attraction common or rare, but you kind of answered that.
Yeah, at least for me.
Right, right. And yeah, of course, Kushka is speaking from their own experiences, because we can only speak for ourselves. Uh, okay, so this one's a little embarrassing, and I'm kind of outing myself here, but I gotta ask this. So, and this is potentially pretty common for allospecs. So, here we go. Do I even want to? Okay, I already said I'm going to, so now I'm going to. So, like, being out and about, it's not common for you to, like, think to yourself, like, oh, that person has kind of a cute butt. Like, not like leering or being creepy, but the initial thought when someone walks by, that's, like, not common for you at all.
No, I don't. I do not think about random people's butts, Katya. I or really pay attention to that.
I mean, I didn't say think about, I said notice.
Oh, well, that too.
Okay, chat, am I being weird?
Gator.
Yeah, Gainer, it was a self-report. Okay. So, kind of getting into this a little more, how would you say being ace has affected your life?
Oh, that's interesting. So, I didn't really know that I was demisexual until I was already an adult and I had learned more about, like, the sexual, like, and romantic spectrums. And when I looked into it more, and I was like, oh, that is exactly me. But I feel like it would affect people, different demisexual people, more depending on what kind of environment that they're in. Because the way that I grew up and the kind of environment that I was in most of my life was very fundamentalist, evangelical Christian. So, not being sexual or being interested in sexual things wasn't that big of a problem in that particular environment because it was just seen as me being like, oh, I'm the good girl or whatever the fuck, you know. But turns out it was just actually just what my sexuality was. But so in that sense, it wasn't really a big issue where I was like super discriminated against because of the specific environment I was in. It did make it awkward as I moved out of that into more like open and like sex positive spaces because it made it hard because I couldn't tell, is this what I actually feel? Is this my actual sexuality, or is this like latent Christianity that is like telling me I'm something that I'm not? That specifically was really complicated. Trying to figure out what was me actually as a demisexual person and what was, weird Christian purity culture ideas about like sex bad. Which sex is not bad. I think sex is great, but there was a very complicated internal process. And learning about the different labels like demisexual, like those things actually exist, helped a lot and made me feel a lot less weird. So I wouldn't say necessarily, at least in my specific case, I can't say, I can't speak for other people, but in my specific case, it was very internally weird and difficult, but in my external day-to-day life, it didn't have that much of an impact, if that makes sense.
No, that makes a lot of sense. So another question, and you can tell me if I'm crossing any boundaries or if you just don't want to answer. It's totally fine. Because you know me, I'm a little bit open about life sometimes. I'm private but open. I'm a contradiction. But so on the note of like with the whole growing up Christian coming out of that, you're in a lot of spaces that I run in, especially like online and stuff that I wouldn't say are positively sexual, but are definitely sex positive. Like, how has that transition been for you as an asexual person? Like, has it been weird? Has it been normal? Has it been whatever? And just like seeing that just kind of be normal, but also not something that really is something that's going to get you thinking a whole lot.
So just to make sure I understand what you said, you asked me if being in more like open or sex positive spaces how has that affected me, basically?
That's correct, yeah.
It definitely helped me to make sure that I was not just having like weird leftover Christian ideas about abstinence. 'Cause who was it? Someone in the chat mentioned something about that. I want to see if I can find it. Where'd you go? Well, but yeah, oh, it was Anna. I find it funny and sad how many people don't realize that asexuality does not mean abstinence or lack of arousal, etc. And yeah, it basically helped me figure out that it wasn't like weird ideas about abstinence and like the purity Christian thing. It was just actually who I was and how I felt. So for me personally, being in spaces like that helped because it helped me figure out, oh, it is just me. It's not this weird thing that was forced on me.
So it was actually healthy for you.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. That's good. Yeah, it's very interesting because it's something obviously on the romantic end I can kind of get it because I've talked about this a few times, but I'm at least twice on this channel now. But I'm demi-romantic, but I'm pansexual. So from the romantic aspect of that, it's like I can kind of understand some of what you're saying, but I'm really lucky that I have you around and could have you come on to kind of because that's not somewhere that my brain can really go to, because that is way out of my experience because like my whole life I've been attracted not only to everybody but to everybody of like
Everybody.
well able to be attracted to all genders is something that I have always been, and there's been like a lot of shame. Like I am pan, identified as bisexual before that for 8 years, and there's a lot of like discrimination and stuff like that came with that from growing up Mormon and stuff like that. So it's like the idea of being ace is interesting to me because it's like on the one hand you weren't super guilty feeling probably about like that as a sin growing up. Like correct me if I'm wrong, but
Well, I didn't feel bad about it in like the religion sense because again, purity culture, fundamentalist Christianity. So in that way I didn't feel bad, but I did feel weird because I did feel like as far as like being like a normal human that like something might be kind of like broken. if that makes sense. And I'm like, oh, maybe I got born and like something broke in my brain and I can't, where I'm just not like attracted to people. There was a really brief time when I was like 15 where I was like, well, maybe I'm just a lesbian and maybe I am actually not attracted to guys. Maybe I'm just into girls. But when I thought about that and looked into that a little, I was like, no, it's the same. So I'm not necessarily lesbian, but I'm also not into guys. I was like, well, I guess I'm into nothing. And then here I am marrying a girl. But but I don't know, does that answer your question? Where like I didn't feel like I was like, oh, I'm a sinner, but I did feel like I was broke as a human. Human machine broke.
No, that makes a lot of sense, and it is the case that, like, I don't know how, to what extent, now obviously I'm not going to ask you to share anything dramatic, but, like, it is also the case that asexual people do experience discrimination. It's different discrimination and sometimes for different reasons, but I would say that there is definitely that aspect of things because people expect you to be like you said, quote, normal. But that's the thing, though, is normal doesn't really exist. Normal exists because people say it is and accept it. What normal is changes, like, every few years. You know, so... but, like, it's very fascinating to me comparing our experiences and seeing how being these different things affected us. Because it's like... in a weird way, I'm kind of lucky. I kind of knew what I liked at like a very young age, but like, I can see how that would be kind of hard for you to kind of difficult to figure out like what's going on when, because at very very least, non-heterosexual people have had some type of representation, like at least in media. Not always good representation, but like you probably were aware that gay people existed before you were at least I was aware of gay people, bisexual people, etc. before becoming aware that ace people existed. Because there's not a lot of representation outside of Aaron Paul's character in BoJack Horseman that I can think of yet for ace people.
Yeah, not that I can think of off the top of my head, because like a lot of times when asexual people are in media, it's usually like beep boop, I am a robot, and it's like that's not accurate. Like we still have emotions and can have like relationships and things like that. So yeah, it's, which I think kind of, you know, added on to the, oh, I guess I'm broke feeling, because, you know, in media, asexual people are usually portrayed as almost like they're not like 100% people, if that makes sense. Maybe that's like an extreme way of saying that, but like, you know what I mean?
Or often, like, they'll end up, like, at the end of the story, like, being, quote, cured, which is really gross. Mm-hmm. You know, and then Todd, that's his name, Todd from BoJack Horseman. I knew it's the Breaking Bad guy, but, like... but, yeah, that, you know, that makes a lot of sense in terms of, how that would be and stuff. That like I'm sorry that you felt that, but I'm feeling of brokenness for so long. But like, would you say just having the label of demisexual kind of helped to feel like to heal some of that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because like I mentioned earlier, once I figured out that that label was a thing and that it matched me almost to a T, I was like, oh, I guess I am not broken, and there's actually like a lot of other people that have similar experiences and similar feelings. So I was like, okay, I don't have to be weird. You know?
Things are only weird until we have a label to them that people have been exposed to and accepted.
True.
Yeah, so trying to think how to verbalize this. But it's one of those things where it's just so not to be weird. And you can tell me if I'm being weird, Kushka, and the chat. I mean, I'm always weird. Chat will test it. Is Katya always weird? You know, if you say no, you're lying. But it's very, very interesting to me to kind of compare some of that, because it's like, how much of that feeling broken would you attribute to cishet normativity rather than, strictly speaking, Christianity? Because I know Christianity reinforces cishet normativity, but cishet normativity is why, largely, where probably most acephobia comes from. Not all, obviously. There's problems within the GRSM community, like we talked about at the beginning. But does that question make sense?
So you're asking me a chicken or the egg question?
Yeah, like let me be just clear. How much of what you experienced of that broken feeling that you're healing from with the label was due to Christianity, and how much was due to cishet normativity?
I guess kind of both. It's hard for me to... I know they can be separated, because they are frequently, but it's hard for me to separate cishet normativity from, like, the fundamentalist Christianity, because they each reinforce each other so strongly. And then, you know, Christianity forced cishet normativity through colonialism. So I'm also like, it's hard for me to articulate them as separate entities, even though, like, you can be like an atheist and, you know, reinforce the cishet normativity, or a pagan and do that. So I would say both, probably, just to be safe.
No, that's fair. That's fair, because one obviously leads to the other, and fundamentalist, colonial, toxic forms of Christianity definitely reinforce systemic bad ideas, systemically implemented bad ideas, more than probably anything else, and that just kind of rubs off on other people and makes them more toxic, which, you know, I'm not saying that about every Christian. I'm being very specific with my language. Colonial forms of fundamentalist, toxic Christianity. I'm being very specific there. So let's not be disingenuous with what I'm criticizing there. But yeah, so I guess here's another question. I know we're coming close to an hour, so probably wrap up soonish. But like, what advice would you have for people that are figuring out that they might be A-Spec?
Oh, that's hard. Don't put me on the spot like that. Honestly, just like, if you're not sure if you're on the asexual or aromantic spectrum, I would just, you know, experiment and try to figure out, you know, how you respond to certain things. At least that's what I did. I was like kind of methodical that way, I guess, but it's kind of... that's hard to give advice on, because I feel like it's so personal and individual. But I guess just like, yeah, just don't feel bad if you don't know right away, because like I mentioned like in the beginning, I actually don't even know where I am on the romantic scale. Like, I still don't know about that. I'm just like, I like Katya. I gotta figure out what else or something. But yeah, just don't feel bad if you don't know. Don't be scared to experiment. That's just what I would say, but it's also up to you.
So the another way of saying that is, don't feel guilty for figuring out what you are and being in the process of figuring it out, no matter how old you are. It doesn't matter if you're 40. It doesn't matter if you're 18. Just don't feel guilty about not knowing things, because it's not your fault you don't know. You're learning, and learning's okay.
We like learning here. Learning is good. Learn good.
Learn good. And, trying to figure out the optics of this. Make sure it's ethically sourced if you can, but don't be afraid if you're experimenting to look at certain things targeted for adults if it's ethically sourced and all as well. And that's not for everybody, and that's valid too. But, figure yourself out. It's okay.
Yeah.
Kushka. So we're wrapping up here. Kushka, do you want to say where people can find you, like what your content is and what you talk about? Like, who besides my wife, who the fuck are you?
Who the fuck am I? I'm Kushka. No, yeah, I do YouTube sometimes. My YouTube channel is Kushka Has Thoughts, and I mostly talk about like spiritual, like paganism type hot topics, hot pockets. I can't speak words, which is normal, but
Pagan topics.
pagan hot pockets. I talk about pagan topics. And sometimes I'll do other things as well. Like, I actually did a video on being a demigirl, which is also something that I am. There's spiritual hot pockets. Few. But yeah, so mostly pagan spiritual topics, but sometimes I'll do other things, like if it interests me, like the demigirl video. But yeah, that's it really. What about you, Katya? No wait, this is your channel. You already know.
Yeah, you found me. I'm here. And Kushka's channel should be linked in the description. Definitely give her a sub. Her channel is very entertaining. And yeah, Kushka, now you realize that we're going to have to get those vegan Hot Pockets that we get, because now you've made me crave them. What have you done?
Yeah.
All right. Well, I hope everybody enjoyed the stream. Thank you guys so much for coming, and hopefully we all learned something. Again, I might have messed up a little more this time than I did the A-Spec, because I'm more new to this topic. But thank you so much to Kushka for coming. Again, go check her channel out. Give them a subscribe. And yeah, with that, Kushka and I have got to go get those vegan Hot Pockets. So knock them out.